Hello, everyone. I'm sitting with the Reverend Ranjit Mathews, Canon to the Ordinary in the Diocese of Connecticut. And I'm asking Ranjit one opening question. What is your mission story?
My mission story. I remember going to college in GW in Washington, D.C. and looking for Canterbury Club or something that was something akin to the Episcopal Church, and I couldn't find it. And so I wandered into a non-denominational worship service and got sort of caught up in sort of the emotion of it all, and which was very moving, right? Singing songs on transparencies and all of that. And at the end of that service, the lights went on, and I was amongst a group of Korean and Korean American folk. And here I was as a South Asian person. It was just really interesting. And as I moved through that space and over the years at college, a couple of years at least, I grew accustomed to sort of how they were inviting me to be a Christian, which was a little bit more traditional than I was exposed to. They invited me not to hang out with my friends in some sense, right? To not hang out with Muslims or Jews or Hindus, and not go dancing, not sort of enjoy the things, Titus, that I'd come to love and really experience as a young person, right? And so, at the same time, my father was moving through the ordination process in the Diocese of Massachusetts, and he had grown through his spirituality to be someone who was a lot more open than I was at that time. And I remember this sophomore year, going into my sophomore year, so that summer, my father, mother, and sister and I, we traveled to India, as we did for over, every 4 years. And I remember sitting on the veranda of my grandparents' house in Kerala, in Kottayam, where my dad is from. And on the veranda, and my dad and I are sitting together, and here I am moving through Peter Gomes's good book, and sort of wrestling with what my faith was, having a lot of questions around it. And my father, in his wisdom, asked me a question of, and here I was, a little person who was much more, I have these blinders on in terms of how I understood Christianity. And my father said to me, Ranjit, India at the time had a population of 1 billion people. And he said, the vast majority are not Christian. And he said to me, Ranjit, do you believe that all these non-Christians are going to hell? And, that question really sat with me, and it really, met me in my heart. And maybe it was the right time. Maybe it was, the parable of the mustard seed, that seed sort of finding its way into my own heart, and God opening me up with that question to see a little bit more deeply and with sort of wider eyes. And then maybe not a week or two later, we were in the city of Mysore, which was, a place where the British were, and all of that. And there was this incredible cathedral where we just walked in, and my parents and I and my sister, we walked downstairs. We took off our shoes and sort of went downstairs, and everybody was sort of oohing and ahhing and all the relics of that cathedral and all that was sort of permeating that space. And as we made our way up, and my parents went first, and then my sister, at the very top of the stairs were two girls who had leprosy, right? So they didn't have any legs, and were sort of moving around on makeshift skateboards. And I remember one of them very visibly, being at the top of the stairs, and me being a couple of stairs down, just visibly looking at me, Titus. And just like her eyes sort of pierced my soul, and it was like she was saying to me, Ranjit, and and my imagination was Jesus speaking to me through her, saying, Ranjit, forget all of this judgment that I've been accustomed to bringing in who I was as a follower of Jesus, and let that be, and just come and be myself, right? And I felt at that point, Titus, and she took her bare hand and she touched my foot, then brought it to her mouth like this. And in India, and certainly in South Asia, part of tradition has where younger people will touch elders' feet in a sign of respect, and it was as if she was like calling me wholly as I was, right? Not with everything else that was overloaded on me. And Jesus was saying to me, don't just come and be here with me in India and be yourself, right? So I think it was in that moment, Titus, as I reflected on your question, where I felt Christ's love for me and who I was and who I am, inviting me to step into that and not taking on all that had been put on me. So, I, of course, have psychoanalyzed that all the time. And even, I think 4 years later, when I was in seminary, I came back to that same spot, hoping that maybe I'd have the same experience. And of course, that didn't happen. I had an older gentleman who worked at that cathedral come and say, he told me to move along. As I was hoping another experience happened like that. And it was a reminder to me that, such experiences only happen maybe once, and to just hold on to that and let that guide me. So that's been a sort of always invitational to me in all the different areas and places that I've been, is, where is Jesus in that little leper girl who I met? What is she inviting me to be? And reminding me of who I was and who I want to be.
And then you later served abroad. Can you talk a bit about that?
So I served abroad in South Africa for about a year. I was with the Young Adult Service Corps, and I really felt a call to. At the time, there was a scourge really of HIV and AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa, and felt a call from God to go and serve there. And I ended up at the Cathedral Church of St. George's in Cape Town, where I worked with the Office of HIV/AIDS Ministry there, in supporting what was happening in that office. So it was very moving for me. And at the time, thousands of people were dying of HIV and AIDS, and at that time, the events of 9/11 happened. And it was a reminder to me of the realities all around our world, and how we're called to put our hands where Christ's wounds are.
And you later served in Tanzania.
Yeah. So my wife and I, Joanna, we were serving at St. Michael's in Milton, Mass, and discerned after 3 years that we were being invited to serve abroad, and went, became Episcopal Volunteers in Mission. And I taught theology, and Joanna was an architect and an administrator and an English teacher at Emsalado Theological College in the Anglican Diocese of Central Tanganyika in the Anglican Church of Tanzania. So we did that for about a year and a half, and it was an amazing space of being porous and hopefully having Catholic personalities where we were opened up by the Holy Spirit to witness to God in different ways by different people ecumenically, and how much they had to teach us with the Tanzanians and other folk who were at that college. So it was, I feel like, more than anything, leaving my comfort zone has opened me up to who God is. And so I really struggle to pinpoint who and what God is, other than at least being open to the movement of the Holy Spirit.
Your mention of the comfort zone, Ranjit, reminds me of a supper conversation in the refectory at General Theological Seminary when you were preparing to go to South Africa We were talking with a group of students, and they were wondering why you were going to South Africa. Why are you going into mission? You said with great passion, because I need to get out of my comfort zone. Very vivid moment. And later on, still, you were the Africa officer, partnership officer for the Domestic and Foreign Missionary Society.
Yeah, and in some sense, Titus, I feel like I witnessed that part of my Christian ministry was also moving me out of my comfort zone, and and we live in a space of different understandings of theology in different parts of our communion, and I felt moved by God to show up in places that where I'm different, right? And maybe theologically, and certainly culturally, and I feel God opening up my heart in those spaces to listen and to witness to God in that moment where hopefully I'm encountering the divine in another person, and not coming with any sense of an answer, but being open to where the Holy Spirit is moving amongst each other, right, and with and between each other. So I truly, Titus, continue to have no answers other than hopefully, waiting on the Holy Spirit to guide in all of that. Really. And that's been such a profound part of who I think God has invited me to be.
Thank you so much for your reflection, for your witness, for your deep sense of God's presence and moving in your life, Ranjit. May God continue to bless you.
Thank you, Titus, and thanks for this time.
Thank you for this conversation.